Welcome, everyone. My name is Matthew Nugent. I am from the West Point class of 1996, one of the co-founders of the MacArthur Society, and the director of donor relations. I get to host today's Commanders Call. Thank you all for being here. So with that, I'm going to give you over to the MacArthur Society president, Colonel Retired Sam Thiessen, USMA class of 1973. Sir, you have the floor.
But I do want to recognize another past president of the MacArthur Society. Bill was president for about 2 years and did a fantastic job of getting us from zero to about 100 miles an hour in that short a period of time, and really did a great job. And I also want to mention that the topic that he's speaking about today, the Red-Green Alliance, the Marxist-Islamist Alliance, some people might say that this is a little bit out of, you know, it's straying from the mission of West Point and the mission of the MacArthur Society. But our oath to the in the Constitution that we take to the Constitution says that we will support and defend the Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic. And we have a lot of domestic enemies these days. At least that's the way we in the MacArthur Society see it. So, Matt, I'm going to turn it back over to you now, but just wanted to put that in there in your minds because West Point has been focused on foreign wars since the Civil War, and we've got a war going on in our country right now. And Matt, over to you.
Very well put, sir. Thank you. So it's an honor to introduce our guest speaker, Colonel Retired Bill Prince, USMA class of 1970. Colonel Prince received his commission in the infantry from West Point in 1970, served in Vietnam with both Ranger and Special Forces units. In 1978, Bill resigned his regular Army commission to accept a position as an operations officer with the CIA. He subsequently received one of the CIA's highest awards for valor for extraordinary heroism in the face of hostile armed opposition. He maintained a commission in the Army Reserve Branch, transferring to Special Forces. Bill's experience in hostile areas includes El Salvador, Somalia, Haiti, Bosnia, Colombia, and Pakistan, with 11 deployments between Afghanistan and Iraq. Sounds like an atlas. He holds a master's degree from Harvard. Much credit to him for surviving Harvard and still maintaining conservative values. His focus was on international relations. Previously, he served as president of the MacArthur Society. We thank you for that, Bill, and has written many articles on our website. Bill will be discussing, as Sam mentioned, research into the Red-Green Alliance. Now, you'll be hearing not only from an accomplished man, but a very dear friend. Colonel Prince, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you. Can you all hear me?
We got you, sir. Name it Charlie.
All right, I'm going to bring some slides up. Okay, we should be at the first slide. It says, where is the threat?
Yes.
All right, first of all, a lot of what Matthew said is true. Actually, the only really great thing that I can take credit for is the woman I asked to be my wife 46 years ago, and she is patient and long suffering. And there should be, at least what Cindy sent out, quite a few of my classmates. I sincerely hope that I don't owe any of you any money. If I do, then you can contact me in Paraguay. No, you can contact me through mission at MacArthurSociety.org. And I've got a tough act to follow. Some of you know that our previous guest speaker at the last Commanders Call was Representative Keith Self, who is a fellow Special Forces officer. And I'll be talking a little bit about him later on in the presentation. Now, I want to say right up front, some of you will not like what I'm about to say, and I recognize that. I'm just going to try to give the facts, share the facts. Now, what the facts that I'm going to share and the conclusions that I'm drawing, I hope I'm wrong about. And if I am wrong, then years from now, you can come back and say, boy, you were all wet on all of that. And I will be delighted to hear that. I was in and out of the Middle East for over about 30 years. And I think I counted up, I worked in about 13 countries in the Middle East. I feel like I developed some familiarity with the Middle East and with Islamism. And that's an important thing that I'm going to define here in just a moment. And as Matthew said, I did my master's degree at Harvard, and the focus there was, well, it was international relations, but within international relations, it was really on the Middle East. And my thesis was on Iran. Specifically, it was Iranian capability to conduct terrorist or covert operations in the Western Hemisphere. Anyway, it was by virtue of all of that that I became very interested in this alliance between the radical left and radical Islam. Before I go any further, I got to give a shout out to my old neighbor, Bob. You know who you are. And I'm going to lead off with something that you will recognize, and that is ready, push. What me worry? Well, I think we should. Uh, Actually, that last slide, let me talk about. Are we back on the first slide now?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. Uh, that's me right after 9/11, stumbling around the bushes in Afghanistan. And on the right, that picture is the steps of the Widener Library at Harvard, the graduate school library where I spent several hundred hours while I was working on my master's degree up there. Obviously, that crowd was not in attendance when I was going in and out of the Widener Library. But I want to make something very, very clear right off the bat. I am not here to bash Muslims or denigrate Islam. It is not an exaggeration to say that I'm alive today because there were Muslims willing to risk their lives to protect mine. Okay, we've had Muslim house guests here in our home. Some of the finest people on the face of the earth I worked with in various years in the Middle East. But I feel that we do have a growing threat. Okay, and it's a threat that I believe we should worry about. Now, Matthew mentioned a moment ago the officer oath, support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I fear that we've got enemies, both foreign and domestic. And we took an oath to defend the Constitution. Next, okay. National security threat, yes. Now, this is just a teaser here. Yeah, the Democratic Socialists of America have been in the media a lot recently. And what I've got quoted here is from their website. We're going to talk about this a little bit more later in the presentation. But I want us to focus on this. This is from their website. Establish public ownership of the largest corporations and essential industries. Amnesty to all immigrants. Of course, that means open borders. Defund the Department of War, abolish ICE, and steps toward fully abolishing the police. If you're not familiar with Cloward and Piven, and I hope most of you are, if you're not familiar with that strategy, you need to get familiar with it because what the DSA is talking about would result in just what Cloward and Piven hoped would happen in our society, which is a total breakdown and an elimination of our constitutional protections. All right, I'm not the only one that sees the importance of this alliance. Only a coalition of Marxists and Islamists can destroy the U.S. That's Carlos the Jackal, and who in prison, if I remember correctly, converted to Islam. I think he's exactly right. Only a coalition of Marxists and Islamists can destroy the U.S. And Osama bin Laden, the interests of Muslims and the interests of socialists coincide in the war against the Crusaders. I absolutely love this poster. It's a little dated here, or this picture. It's a little bit dated, but these are two protesters shutting down a military recruiting center in 2012. That female on the right would have real trouble dressing like that in quite a few of the countries where I served over the years. Okay, important. I believe the far left is gaining increased power, political influence. I think it is not a stretch to say that the DSA seeks to abolish the Constitution. And if you have any doubts about the increased power and political influence they have, all you have to do is look at the recent primaries. And I believe Islamists, and I will define that term in a second, are gaining increased political power, or increased power and influence. And I believe that both groups are very comfortable in employing violence. Now, as we saw during the BLM riots, I'll talk about them in just a few minutes, or also known as mostly peaceful demonstrations. All right, this is what got me really interested in this. This is some 15 years ago. I was studying, trying to learn about Islam because I was spending half my life over there. And I think this is fair. If you look at the left, their fundamental philosophies, freedom of speech versus blasphemy laws, freedom of or from religion, punishment for apostasy, feminism, subjugation of women, celebrate diversity, death for homosexuals, anti-war jihad, and church-state separation and Sharia law. These two groups should be really at polar opposites, and yet we see them cooperating, I would submit, very, very closely now. Cause for concern. I'm going to give you a couple of really scary slides here. First one. Now, this is year group 18 to 29, 18 to 29 years of age, favorable or unfavorable view. Socialism, favorable view, 62% of the people, these young people surveyed between 18 and 29 years of age, 62% had a favorable view of socialism. 34% had a favorable view of communism. Good grief. That should scare us. And that's a survey from the Cato Institute just a little over a year ago. Now, among Democrats, and this is less than a year ago, among Democrats, 66% had a positive view of socialism, and only 42% had a positive view of capitalism. That should concern us. All right, here's another one. Pew Research Survey, and I've over the years I've used a lot of their information. Pew Research, I think they're very reliable. This is a survey they did between the 4th and the 17th of May, just this year. 40%, 44% of Muslims in the US support Hamas. Wow. I mean, after the atrocities that Hamas committed on the 7th of October, 44% of the Muslims in the US support them. And I would submit that actually that 44% is less than the actual total, because I'm sure there were some that probably didn't want to tell a pollster that they supported Hamas. We're talking about 2 million people here in the United States that support Hamas. I think everybody knows who these folks are. We're going to talk a little bit about this now, the political alliance. I think you recognize all three of them. And these are the topics. And I'm going to go through these very quickly, but I will stay around for as long as anybody wants when we go into the informal part that Sam's going to run here starting about 1 o'clock. Okay, the so-called Green Scare, we're going to talk about Islamism, and I'll spend a couple of minutes on an organization called the Council on American Islamic Relations. The Red Scare, talk a little bit about homegrown Marxists, and also the influence of the Chinese Communist Party, which, folks, it's dramatic. The influence that the Chinese Communist Party is having in the United States is dramatic. And I just saw an article this morning about my second alma mater, Harvard, and all the cooperation between Harvard and the Chinese Communist Party. I'm going to talk about why the alliance and then some pushback and some recommendations. Okay, the Green Scare, Islamism. And I want to define terms here. Now, I believe, and there's some on this Zoom that will disagree with me, but I believe that it's appropriate to describe Islamism as an ideology because it governs political, social, cultural, and religious matters. Okay, I think that qualifies in it as an ideology. Islam is the religious component of what I consider to be a totalitarian ideology. Okay, Islamists. I'm talking about Islamist tactics in the US. Attack opponents with slurs such as racist. Well, first I spent some time in Bosnia. I know blonde-haired, blue-eyed Muslims. Muslims are not a race. And one of the most pernicious terms that we've allowed into our vocabulary recently is Islamophobe. It was created by Iranian fundamentalists. I'll share a quote with you later, but it deserves repeating. Islamophobia is a word created by fascists and used by cowards to manipulate morons. We cannot allow people to use that term. A little bit more on that later. The Islamists will claim victim status, that they're being subjected to hate crimes. The media will almost immediately rush to their defense and, oh, we have to be concerned about backlash. Anyway, the objective is to shut down legitimate debate about Islamist activities. They just want to call names to try to shut down debate. We cannot accept that. All right, CARE, Council on American Islamic Relations, created in 1994 by the Islamic Association of Palestine. That's important, folks. It was created by the Islamic Association of Palestine. Now, that organization was shut down by the Department of Justice because they froze their assets because of their support for Hamas. CARE claims to be a grassroots devoted promoting justice, empowerment on behalf of American Muslims. This is a very dangerous organization. I don't have time to go into all of the CARE skullduggery, sexual harassment cover-ups, Hamas terror connections. They were an unindicted co-conspirator in the largest terrorism financing case in the U.S., criminal intimidation, and hidden foreign funding. At least 12 CARE employees, associates have been arrested, convicted, or deported. But here's a real kicker. Nihad Awad, co-founder of CARE and current executive director. All right. This is a direct quote from him. The people of Gaza only decided to break the siege, the walls of the concentration camp on October 7th. And yes, I was happy to see people breaking the siege. How anyone could say that he was happy about what happened on October 7th is astounding to me. And he said it in November 2023. He said it, a month and a half after those atrocities. The Red Scare. Now, Matthew, I can see you on this screen, and I know you and others have talked at length about this. Oh, good, Matthew.
I got it right here, sir.
This is a scary book. If you've not read this, at least read the Wikipedia article. This was published by two People's Liberation Army colonels, published in 1999. They admitted that China cannot defeat the U.S. in kinetic warfare, must defeat the U.S. using non-kinetic means. I have heavily footnoted this book and read it twice. It will scare you because I think these two PLA colonels have nailed it. Okay. I'm not, like I said, I'm not the only one concerned about this stuff. If you can't see the title to this document, it's CCP Influence in U.S. Pro-Palestinian Activism. I'm going to connect the dots between pro-Palestinian activism, the CCP, and the radical left here in the U.S. This was authored by Jennifer Baker, Senior Research Fellow, George Washington University Program on Extremism. She published this just a little over a year ago. It is 30 pages and has 139 footnotes. I mean, this is a scholastic, detailed study, and she, in my considered opinion, nails the relationship. Okay, I want to talk about these two characters. I think probably at least some of you on this Zoom have heard of one or perhaps both of these individuals. I'm going to talk about the Chinese connection here. The guy on the left, Neville Roy Singham, U.S. citizen. Father was a Marxist-Leninist scholar at Brooklyn College. Young Neville joined the League of Revolutionary Black Workers as a teenager. And they're defunct now, that League of Revolutionary Black Workers. But their program was abolish racism, capitalism, and imperialism. So Neville goes back a long way with this stuff. He built ThoughtWorks technology company through the 1990s. And in 2017, he sold it for $785 million. Now, there's some indication, I can't prove this, but there is some indication that the Chinese Communist Party plussed up the sale price of his company, which would make sense because if they put a couple of $100 million into the sale price, then he's going to turn around and use that in what we're going to talk about in just a minute. So 2017, he marries Jody Evans, Code Pink co-founder, and moves to Shanghai, where he's been hanging out for all of these years. Now, as a former CIA officer, as I looked into this, I was thoroughly impressed with how he was able to develop front companies and manipulate the moving of funds. He starts off estimates 278 million to 6 nonprofits. I love the names: the People's Support Foundation, Justice and Education Fund, supported groups. And we're hearing about these supported groups: Party for Socialism and Liberation, the People's Forum, and Code Pink. Code Pink was co-founded by his now wife, Jody Evans. Party for Socialism and Liberation, 68 chapters, they're nationwide. There are estimates that his funding from China has gone to approximately 2,000 different organizations to push the Chinese Communist Party propaganda. This is a Fox News flow chart from Neville Roy Singham through these front companies and organizations and into these NGOs. He's been a very busy guy. Jody Evans, co-founder of Code Pink. She must be a real femme fatale. Her first husband, Max Palevsky, died in 2010. He was worth $640 million. And then she turns around and marries Neville Roy Singham, and he's worth whatever I said, $785 million. Okay, you can see she's pro-China and anti-war. China is not our enemy. Stop Asian hate. No kings. Probably familiar with this. 8 million people in the streets back in March, 3,300 different locations. And I'm going to vent here for a second, but there are some of us, I hope on this Zoom, that will never forgive this woman. We will never forget and never forgive this woman for what she did, and she's still at it. Jane Fonda and Bruce Springsteen joined together for No Kings Rally in Minnesota. Our revolution, very prominent. Where did it come from? From Bernie Sanders' failed presidential campaign organization. Remember the slide I showed? There's Bernie with the now mayor of New York City and AOC. Claims 100,000 members, 50 states, claims to be the country's largest grassroots progressive action group. Says since 2016, they've helped to elect more than 1,000 candidates. It gets worse. Key support groups for our revolution: Democratic Socialists of America, Justice Democrats. Now, that's an interesting organization. I don't have time to go into Justice Democrats, but they have been electing far left Democrats. They've not been going after Republicans. They've been going after people they consider to be moderate Democrats to get them thrown out of office, to get in far left Democrats. Communist Party USA claims 5,000 members, but they've got a mailing list, I've heard, of 20,000. And this last one, Freedom Road Socialist Organization. Very, very interesting group, formed in '85 from Maoist-oriented groups. Now, all three founders of Black Lives Matter, all three of those women that founded Black Lives Matter were affiliated with the Freedom Road Socialist Organization. Very influential, small, but very influential. Okay, let's get back on the Democratic Socialists of America. And I apologize, this slide, I believe, is a little dated. They are now claiming 120,000 members. Largest socialist organization in the US, chapters in all 50 states. Okay, you can go onto their website. I downloaded this and printed it off, that thing on the right. DSA, our program. Workers deserve more. This is right from their website, folks. They're not making any secret about this anymore. Public ownership of largest corporations, essential industries. Now, this is interesting. Free Palestine and end all military and economic aid to Israel. I mean, there's a lot of downtrodden people around the world, but they focused on the Palestinian situation and trying to end all military and economic aid to Israel. Israel, I would submit, is and has been our strongest ally in the Middle East. Okay, amnesty to all immigrants. We talked about defund the Department of War, abolish ICE, steps toward fully abolishing the police, health care for all, and cancel all student debt. And I would submit that that's probably, that last one, cancel all student debt, is why they seem to be so attractive to that demographic of, what was it, 18 to 29 or something. Members of Congress, no surprises here. AOC, Greg Casar in Texas, Rashida Tlaib. But what's interesting, the DSA, the former members, or the members of the DSA, formerly in the House, and Jerry Nadler, I think it was last February, called ICE officers goons, and actually stated publicly that people were justified to shoot these. These are federal law enforcement officers, and we've got a member of Congress saying, yeah, it's okay to shoot them. Okay, recently in the news, Chevalier, I guess is how you pronounce her name, organized Students for Justice in Palestine. You're starting to see the connections here. She's also the one that I've heard bragged about wiping her dirty hands on the American flag. Ms. Valdez has been critical of Israel genocide. Brad Lander has a policy of ending U.S. aid to Israel. And if you don't know these two characters, you certainly should. Hassan Piker is a really bad guy. It's astounding to me that Abu el-Said has not, at least just for political atmospherics, rejected contact from this guy. And the amazing thing about el-Said winning that primary was that outside PACs poured $650 million into that election for his opponent to try and keep him from getting elected. A little bit more on the Freedom Road Socialist Organization. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. I've spent a bit of time in Israel. All you have to do is look at a map, and you recognize that slogan means the eradication of Israel. It means the total destruction of Israel. Also, the Freedom Road Socialist Organization has been very big into the recent riots in Madison, Wisconsin. Okay, why the alliance? We're going to land this thing here in just a couple more minutes. I think this is probably an accurate quote by David Horowitz. Central to both radical Islam and the radical Western left, inclination to overthrow the existing order by any means necessary so as to create a paradise on earth. Any means necessary, that includes the voting booth, and I would submit it also includes violence. Smash the state. America was never that great. I think that America was never that great. I think that's a quote from Cuomo, the former governor of New York. I wouldn't swear to that. Okay, we had some pushback. Texas Governor Greg Abbott, EO, executive order signed November 25, designating CARE as a foreign terrorist transnational criminal organization. I agree completely with him doing that. Down here in Florida, where I live, our governor, DeSantis, signed an executive order designating CARE and the Muslim Brotherhood foreign terrorist organizations. I believe he's exactly right in doing that. And then this past April, the legislature passed and he signed legislation, HB 1471, directly targeting CARE as a terrorist organization. Richly deserved, in my personal opinion. All right, we had Keith Self, fellow Special Forces officer, and I think he's got master wings there on his suit in that picture. Launched the Sharia Free America Caucus. I think he said when he was on last month that there are up to 68 members from 25 states. Now, be advised that 119 members of Congress signed a letter condemning the Sharia Free America Caucus and described the caucus as Islamophobic. Woo! They love that term.
Hmm.
Here's a list. I think this only has 64. I'm going to leave this slide on for just a minute. I don't know, maybe that you may not be able to see if your member of the House is on that. Anyway, if your member of the House of Representatives is not on that caucus, and my recommendation slide here in just about 2 or 3 more minutes, I would urge you to urge them to join that caucus. Chip Roy, my opinion, he's one of the real patriots. In April, he introduced H.R. 8236 to direct the Secretary of the Treasury to list the Council on American Islamic Relations, chapter affiliates, specially designated global terrorists, and other purposes. These are the co-sponsors. Very quickly, I wish we had 100 co-sponsors on that. What are we up to? I think I probably got 15 names on there. A couple of key ones, though. Pat Harrigan is on this list. Pat, for the West Point graduates on here, Pat is on the Board of Visitors, and I was thrilled to see him just here not very long ago, last July, to sign on to this. That's a great thing. Okay, again, I'm not the only one that's concerned about this. This was just released here a couple months ago. United States Counterterrorism Strategy for 2026. Counterterrorism strategy addresses 5 functional aspects of the current CT environment. And number 2 is new and deepening alliances between far left and Islamists, i.e., the Red Green Alliance. This is right there in the United States Counterterrorism Strategy. Okay, a national security threat, you be the judge. We got unrestricted warfare on the left. We've got Jody Evans and her ilk on the right. I would submit that we have enemies, foreign and domestic, and we need to take the threat seriously. Okay, a couple of recommendations. First of all, we need to educate ourselves on the issue. Matthew, a moment ago, held up the book. I would get that book, read it. It spells out what Matthew, there are probably 15 different lines of attack that those authors list, lines of attack against the U.S. to weaken the U.S. Refuse to be bullied by name calling. Islam is not a race, and Islamophobia, a word created by fascists and used by cowards to manipulate morons. Don't accept that. We need to engage with political civic organizations, veteran groups, churches. I've given this presentation, not by design, but I've probably given this thing 15 times because every time I give it, somebody in the audience says, whoa, I'm in another group and they need to hear this as well. Vote. What I think it was 40 million people, self-identified evangelical Christians who should be, I would think, mostly fairly conservative, didn't even bother to vote in the last presidential election. 80 to 90 million people in the US didn't even bother to vote. And we've got every member of the House of Representatives coming up for election. Go listen to them. They're going to be out here campaigning. Go and just raise your hand. Are you a member of the Sharia Free America Caucus? If not, why not? Hold their feet to the fire. And challenge your reps to co-sponsor that the Chip Roy's legislation, HR 8236. We've got to fight back, folks, my view. Okay, some resources. Jihad Watch and the left column daily diet. If you sign up for Jihad Watch, it will come into your inbox every day. Now, the lead line in the Wikipedia article on Jihad Watch, quote, Jihad Watch is an American far-right Islamophobic blog operated by Robert Spencer. They love to just throw the slurs. Nothing about, well, these are articles that this individual, Robert Spencer, seems to find important about this particular topic. No, this is a far-right Islamophobic blog. A book that I just finished came out in 2026, United in Hate, The Left's Romance with Tyranny, Terror, and Hamas. This is a very deep dive into the psychology. Jamie Glassoff, actually the book is not quite what I expected, but it's a very deep dive in the psychology that unites these two groups. Woke Army, this is from Asra Nomani, Red Green Alliance, Destroying America's Freedom. Asra Nomani is a Muslim, and she goes way back and just takes you right through the development of the Red Green Alliance. And then Intifada on the Hudson, selling of Mondani. Robert Spencer drafted this. Actually, he drafted it before he was elected. Very telling about George Soros and all the people that were behind Mamdani's run for mayor of New York City. Okay, let me open it up. Now, Matthew, do we have time for a couple of questions? If not, I will stay on afterwards for the informal part.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, we're going to go over a little bit on time. Okay. This is great, Bill. It always is when we hear you talk. There's so much going on my mind right now. I'm going to quote you, and this is worth. Islamophobia is a word created by fascists, used by cowards on morons to divide, I mean, to create division. So I memorized that. One question I had is, what can we do? And yeah, and I recall two specific things. One is vote. Two is log on to jihadwatch.org, which I did while you were talking. I know I should pay attention to while you're talking. And the other one is call your member of Congress. Now, okay, so if you have a question, please put it in the chat. However, General Weiss is a general, and he was the superintendent of South Carolina schools. So, or General Zace, Mick Zace, General Zace, sir, could you go ahead and put your hand up? I'll click it again and unmute mute you. We'd like to hear what you have to say, sir.
Yeah, I just wanted to offer a thought that the goal is not paradise on earth. I'll read a quotation and then expound on that. The terrorist lives for terror, not for the change he tells himself he wants. He masks his desire to kill and destroy behind the curtain of a cause. And I think that also is true of the Islamists. I think it's true of the Marxists. It's true of the socialists. It's true of all of them. Socialism light was woke cancel culture that eliminated people from academia because they didn't have the right views. They didn't get tenure. And I think we make a mistake by saying they have noble motives. I don't believe they do have noble motives. They want to have power and revenge on the people who are successful.
Thank you, General Zace.
Let me respond to that, Matthew. First of all, General Zace is one of my heroes, and he actually went back and found the Camp Evans, went back to Vietnam and actually went out in the jungle and found where we were assigned in Vietnam at Camp Evans up north of Hue with the 101st. Yeah, I believe, and as I said earlier, I hope I'm wrong, and I hope a couple of years from now, people on this Zoom or others that I've given presentations to will come back and say, you know, you were just full of hot air. If you look at Cowart and Piven, the strategy was to overload the government bureaucracy, which would resolve in chaos. And then from chaos would result, as it always does. I mean, you look at the French Revolution, you look at the Bolshevik Revolution, you look at all of these revolutions that have promised peace and justice and prosperity, and they end up as dictatorships.
After killing millions of people.
After killing millions of people. If you just think for a second, okay, we're gonna open the borders and we're gonna empty the jails and we're gonna defund the police. How's that gonna work out for us? I mean, really? Although, as I just read somebody the other day said, well, you know, if we're gonna get rid of the prisons, then we really don't need police, because what are the police going to do if they're going to arrest somebody and there's no prisons to send them to?
Okay, so we're running over on time, but I'm going to get to as many questions as possible. A very common sense question from Dennis: how can these people pass getting a security clearance to get elected?
Yeah, you may know, and this is something that has troubled me for a long, long time. You may know that members of Congress do not have to go through get security clearances. They don't have to go through background investigations. And supposedly they have been vetted by the public. And Andre Carson is a member of Congress, a Muslim, who sits on the CIA subcommittee. And that worries me, or has worried me. You wonder where his allegiance is. Actually, a couple of people that are on this that I've known for decades, we were talking and said, you know, if Hillary Clinton did, or if we had done what Hillary Clinton did with her personal server, we would have been escorted out of CIA headquarters under armed guard, okay? Our badges removed. We would never have access to classified documents again, and that's just for starters. Um, some of you should be nodding your head that had walked the halls of CIA headquarters.
Hey, thank you, Bill. We've got a lot
Yeah,
of questions, and
but this goes back to our trying to demand that our elected officials step up and fight this threat. Back to you, Matthew.
a lot of questions. Yeah, in fact, someone just texted me, the author Casey Fleming, and he would like to Casey, if you could please raise your hand, and so we can see you. And we're running over, but this is great content. And Casey, can you
Just
hear me?
raised it. Yeah.
Okay,
You
there
can
you go.
hear me?
Casey, go ahead and ask your question.
Well, actually, just a fantastic job. You in the same wheelhouse for 100%. I'm not one of the guys going to tell you they're all wet, unfortunately. Spot on. I just want to say a great job. Incidentally, I just came out with this book a few months ago, and it is the updated US version and world version of unrestricted warfare, as well as the naked communist. So anyway, thank you very much. Godspeed to you.
Thank you, Casey. And I was going to ask you to hold up your book. You did that for us. Thank you. We're running short on time. And some other questions. Let's see here. Some of these are really deep. From Al Duff. Do we fully understand how we got here and what we are doing about it? And I would just say, Al, read this book, Battle for the American Mind by Secretary Hegseth and David Goodwin. I've actually spent some personal time with David Goodwin. I'm working on getting in front of Secretary Hegseth. If someone can help me do that, that'd be great. But we should have David Goodwin come and speak for us. Brilliant mind, General Zace. I'm sure you would appreciate that. But to answer Al Duff's question, how we got here, Bill, could you address that, sir?
I will offer at least a partial answer, and I base this on my adventure at Harvard. Disclaimer: I had a great time at Harvard. I had terrific professors, not my politics, but it was a great experience for me. Reinforced actually for me my worldview. But having said all of that, what the young people are getting at our colleges and universities almost entirely is a leftist slant. I saw a thing just the other day, and again, I think I focus on Harvard because I went there, and it was several of the departments at Harvard, and they didn't have a single conservative professor in the entire department. Well, the worldview of those professors is going to seep in to the heads of those, especially the undergraduates. Now, I didn't have a problem because I was an old guy, but those young people are coming in and they're getting, and I'll use this term, they're getting indoctrinated. And they're coming out of there with a view of the world that is terribly skewed. I mean, you saw the slide about how many of them had a favorable view of communism, for goodness sakes. I thought when the Soviet Union collapsed, okay, well, we're done with that bunch. No, not so fast. I think that's part of it, and I think our media is to blame.
Absolutely.
And I saw this during the Vietnam War, and I know there's a number of us that are old graybeards that spent some time stumbling around the jungle over there. The media has done us a great disservice. And so consequently, there are a lot of people that get their worldview from the media, and it's a terribly biased one. Back.
Thank you, Bill. Now, if you want to know more about that, look at the 45 communist goals written by Skousen in The Naked Communists. And in the 45 goals, 2 points about that. One, it's all non-kinetic warfare. Second, it's about taking down the structure that defends against this type of non-kinetic warfare. And I'll say that Casey Fleming's book, Red Tsunami, it's on my nightstand, Casey. Otherwise, I'd hold it up right now. That, to paraphrase, is a quasi 45 communist goals of today, and he enumerates it. But understand that our enemies are smart, patient, ruthless, and they understand. And we'll segue into why this is important to relevant to the MacArthur Society. Things like DEI and CRT, they're just not bad ideology. They're forms of warfare. They're forms of warfare. And an enemy has been working for decades and generations to get where they are now. Okay. So in terms of the MacArthur Society, one of the things that Bill was the champion on, believe it or not, that we, the MacArthur Society, have received terrible criticism of, that we elucidated that the past superintendent removed duty on the West Point virtues of duty, honor, country from the mission statement. And it was to, according to his own words, to move toward the Army values. Okay, that shift from virtue, which is which is good and eternal, and values, which are subjective and corruptible. You see that? It's a whole process. What Bill described here, this type of non-kinetic warfare, is the same type of attack that we saw at West Point, at the Air Force Academy, at the Naval Academies, and in our education system. It is a form of warfare. And it took us at the Duty Honor Country Commission proposal leadership group really over a year to figure out that it's not just bad ideology, it's a form of warfare. Okay. So when you, and this is where I'm going to ask you to help us. Bill gave some specific, and he enumerated recommendations. Vote, call your member of Congress, get on jihadwatch.org and subscribe to their newsletter. I'm asking you, I'm kind of preaching to the choir. Thank you for being here and supporting us with your engagement. And there are a lot of leaders here whose whole entire lives, generations of service to our country and to the U.S. Constitution is ongoing. Some of you, 60 years. Thank you for that, ladies and gentlemen. So we are worthy soil. The battle is real. Okay. It is a nonprofit. It is a tax-deductible donation. We're coming close to the end of the year. Please go to MacArthurSociety.org and make donations. We go to Washington, D.C. a lot. We believe we're going to have another Board of Visitors meeting. Sometimes West Point cancels them. Okay. And we continue to be engaged. Okay. And there's a lot more work we can do to bring on more staff for us to do more. So it is worthy. Colonel Thiessen, I'm going to hand it over to you, sir.
All right. Thank you very much, Matthew. And thank you, Bill, Colonel Prince. We are not here to compete with the Association of Graduates, West Point Association of Graduates. We're here to fill in what they really do not do, and that is bring concerns to the leadership of West Point from the Long Gray Line. And General Zais, who's on our board of directors, has made the observation that the West Point AOG represents the West Point leadership to the Long Gray Line. Well, we like to think of ourselves as presenting the concerns of the Long Gray Line to the West Point leadership. Now I'm going to call on Dr. Cass. So you've had your hand up. You've been patient. Patience of Job. So go ahead, Lonnie. Go ahead. You're muted. So
thank you.
There you go.
Thanks. I really appreciate it. And Bill, that was one of the best presentations I have heard on the subject. Absolutely superb. I wanted to pick up on your last point, which was an answer to how it started. It is not just the liberal professors at all of our universities to include the world colleges and the academies. It is the fact, and I have done research on the subject for the chairman of the Joint Chiefs because he asked the question. And the question was, how come all the analysts that come to brief me on the Middle East present a very Islamist point of view? Now, understand who comes to brief the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. Okay, so that would be the top expert at the Department of State, the top experts at DIA, CIA, NSA, etc. So fairly in-depth report shows that starting in the late 90s, both Qatar and Saudi Arabia effectively bought, and there is no other way of describing it, purchased with a lot of money every Middle East studies department in every American university. They choose the professors, they endow the chairs, they kicked out every Jewish professor, established separate departments of Jewish studies or Israeli studies, and they effectively control what is being taught and making sure it is taught through the Islamic lens. They control the publications, they control the lectures, they control the content. You know, typical, he who pays the piper calls the tune. Now, here is the problem that most people kind of ignore. That indoctrination from the left and the Islamist point of view does not stop the moment you graduate. When you have a degree in Middle Eastern studies or international relations focusing on the Middle East, the job market is government, intelligence, consulting, international business. So this is a self-perpetuating and, of course, teaching the next generation. So you have created a self-licking ice cream cone that is there for generations. Qatar invested just since October 7, 2023, $1 trillion, $1 trillion in propaganda in the United States. That is what we need to stop, that flow of money that purchase literally of our universities over.
Well, Lonnie, that's only 700 billion every year, so we got to put it in perspective. That's a lot of money. Martha Ostrom, go ahead and take yourself off of mute.
Hi. I follow all of you, and I'm so grateful. Thank you, Colonel Bill. That was awesome. And Lonnie following up on that as well. I just want to advertise something that STARS and MacArthur Society and the Calvert Task Group, plus ASU's Center for American Institutions, the Arizona Federation of Republican Women, and the Kim Miller's America's Women on October 10th this year. And we purposely positioned this prior to our elections because, you know, Arizona has gone from red to purple to bluish.
Yeah.
We have an event, and it's focusing on the culture, which will include the video, or not video, but presentation with America's the today. The name's going right out of my head because I'm trying to remember everything, but addressing also Islam, and we are putting it still together, but we have gone to, we're trying to get Secretary of War Pete Hegseth here. And so it's very interesting, the behind the scenes connections that we've had, including Mike Rose and Casey Hargett, who was our event chair 2 years ago. So I want to alert all of you that you can have a part in this. We need you. We're focusing, we'd like to have, Dick Klein is here. He was at our meeting the other day. We'd like to reach, our goal is 1,000 people. Now, that doesn't mean everyone can come to the Dream City Church in Scottsdale. The event's from 9 to noon, but we're planning to do streaming. And so we will be getting out save the date notices. And we really, really need all of you to participate in some way, even if it's just telling friends and neighbors, because I can hear and have thought of what Bill and Lonnie are saying, that we're in trouble. And if we don't stand up and speak up and shout or even whisper, we won't have the power. And right now we're at that brink. So we're aware, we're more aware. And I love this commander's call as well. So that's, anyone have any questions? We're still in the making of things, but we would appreciate everyone being involved.
Yeah, and Martha, we're going to have more on our website, and I'm sure Stars will as well, to start banging the drum a little bit louder. Dick, before
Okay.
I go to you, I want to go back to Lonnie because I want to give Bill Prince a chance to respond to the point that she made. And Lonnie, if you would just put that in a nutshell again to get everybody back on that subject, and then we'll come back to Dick and Martha's point. Go ahead, Lonnie.
So the question posed to Bill was, how did it start? And my answer in a nutshell was that Qatar, or Qatar, as it's properly pronounced, and Saudi Arabia bought every Middle Eastern Studies department in every university in the United States. And they effectively own the curriculum, the professors who then go to work for the government and teach the next generation. So what you have is a perennial problem that as long as you allow foreign financing, by the way, China does the same. So Casey, remind me, what's the name of the centers? I'm blanking.
Confucius Institutes.
Yes, thank you. The Confucius Institutes. But China is a little bit more subtle in the sense that they did not fire people. The Qatari and the Saudis fired everybody who is either Jewish or pro-Israel, and made the Middle Eastern departments look online, Judenrein, something that the Germans tried to do. Over.
Yeah. Lonnie, you're 100% correct. I testified before a Senate investigative committee on the malign, pernicious influence of foreign money in higher education. And they're called Centers for Middle Eastern Studies. They're across the nation. and the Confucius Institutes, which have been kicked off the campuses of most colleges, but they've just relocated and changed their names. But it's the billions and billions of dollars every year.
Colonel Prince, did you have a comment?
Only that I have been a bit concerned in training of young officers, and Dick and I was on this call shared a foxhole and some decades ago. Having to tiptoe around the fact that a great many terrorist actions were perpetrated by Muslims, and that gets hard. But the fact remains that if you look worldwide, the vast majority of terrorist attacks are conducted by Muslims, and so if you're training young officers or even older officers, if you try to eliminate the intelligence on the enemy, you are, by definition, hamstringing yourself. You need to understand the threat. And as I said earlier, and honestly, some of the finest people on the planet I've worked with in the Middle East are my counterparts, and I ran operations with them. I really don't want to bash Islam or Muslims, but I think it's important to recognize where to understand the threat. And if you try to soft pedal that, then you're headed down a very, very dangerous road.
Yep.
Over.
Thank you. Thank you. Dick Klein, now, before you start, I'm going to let people know you are on the board of directors. Our board of directors, I think we had just about everybody on from our board of directors. General Valley, General Zace, Dick Klein, who is a retired SES. We have Tony Lentini. I don't know if Tony was on, but Wally Hines is also on the board of directors. Charlie Rash was on. I don't know if Charlie's still on. Mark Gerner, who is class 73 as well, and Ernie Audino. That's our board of directors. So Dick is and Mick are both board directors. Dick, go ahead. You've got a question. Had your hand up.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
It's my belief that the American people, the large body of the American people, are responsive to kinetic attacks on the United States, but are basically blasé about this non-kinetic development that's going on in the intellectual classes and in the backyards of radicalism. We have got to find a way to alert the American people, because I think the solution ultimately must come at the ballot box. But if they are not aware of what's going on, then they see it as just a bunch of intellectual discussions and threats and counter threats, which don't affect them in their daily lives. I am reminded, thinking way back, I don't know if all of you can that far, but to the Goldwater Johnson campaign, where Johnson put a little girl picking flowers and then set a nuclear weapon off in the background. And that hit home and had a big effect on how people were voting. We have got to find a way to shock the American people into the fact that we are dealing with something which will change our way of life, and not in the long term, but in the short term. We are in a position right now where it's just so much discussion that appears on C-SPAN and on some of the intellectual channels, and is not paid due attention by the man on the street or the woman on the street. Thank you.
Thank you, Dick. Jim Wyman, class of 77. Go ahead. You have a question.
It's not a question, it's a couple of points if we have a
Okay.
couple of minutes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, you're nodding. Certainly, we have seen on a larger scale the red-green axis and how it plays out once before in history. When the Shah was in charge of Iran many years ago, there were opposition groups. He was pretty hard on them, threw a lot of people in prison. His opposition groups included the Islamists, who he had kicked out and were refugees in Paris, France, and were sending bombs in the form of cassette tapes of sermons from Ayatollah Khomeini back into Iran and building up a revolution. But there was also a thing called the Tudeh Party, Tudeh. They were communists. And they wanted to overthrow the Shah too. So they figured they could form an alliance with what you are calling Islamists, what we would call the Shiite revolution, the Ayatollah. When they did overthrow the Shah, the Islamic Revolution of Iran took 2 years to round up all the Tudeh Party, throw them in jail, torture them, and kill as many as they could. So there is no more Tudeh Party. So the outplay of the red-green alliance is often that the Islam faction will say, "Thank you very much for your help. Now, please, we'll escort you to death or to prison or something like that." All right. So that's how they repay them, and that's how this may play out if it keeps going in this direction. So that's the first thing. First of all, also we have seen this before. Okay, it was the KGB and the Soviet Union who created the Palestinian Liberation Organization in the mid-60s. They did this because the Middle East was lightly communist, it was socialist, and it was certainly a front, and the only enemy of the socialist and communist bloc was Israel. So how did they fight them? They found an even David to talk about their Goliath, which was Palestinian Arabs, and they formed the Palestinian Liberation Organization. The person who describes this very well in about 8 minutes, and you'll get the entire history, is Robert Spencer. So find a YouTube video on YouTube, Robert Spencer talking about the invention of the Palestinian people. And in 6 to 8 minutes, you'll get the entire history. And the worst, the cap on the whole thing was President Jimmy Carter, a man of, I don't care if you call him pure motives or religious motives or whatever, turned the Palestinian Liberation Organization into the Palestinian people at the Camp David Accords, the Camp David negotiations. And all of a sudden, you have Palestinian people and you have representatives like Rashida Tlaib saying, I cherish my Palestinian roots, where she doesn't even know that those roots came from the KGB. Okay, so that's a couple of things. Now I'm going to have to disagree with former President Prince, Colonel Prince. I do not use the term Islamist. I have Muslim friends that I've developed over a long period of time. I work side by side with. I visit them every year. They do not proselytize to me. And when I'm in their house in Eastern Europe, I do not proselytize or protest to them or teach them about Islam, but I probably know a little bit more about Islam than they do. I would define Islam as what's in the Quran, the biography of Muhammad, the Sirah, and the Hadith. The Hadith are the collections of the traditions of Muhammad, what he said and did. And here's the reason why. Most of us who at least went to the academies or undergraduate had at least one course in computer programming. In our day, computer programming, you wrote the main program, but you had subroutines that did repetitive things for you or that reached out of the side of your main program and did other things. Inside the Quran is like a main program, but in 91 places, it refers to Muhammad, to the life and deeds of Muhammad. Well, where are they? They're not really in the Quran. You have to go outside to his biography and his hadith, the traditions of what he said and did. Muhammad took part in at least 27 raids at the end of his career. In one of them, he took the opposing sheikh, laid him down on the ground, and had his lieutenant start a fire on the sheikh's chest, so he would reveal where the tribe that they were raiding, where their treasury was. And then when the guy wouldn't give it up, he turned the guy over to his lieutenant so he could behead him. Muhammad bought slaves, gave slaves as presents and prizes to his lieutenants. He had more wives than he allowed Muslims did. He married a 6-year-old girl, consummated the marriage when the girl was 9, allowed her to bring her dolls into his house because she was only 6 at the time, even though he didn't like images. Okay, Muhammad was not a guy that we would really admire. Another thing, we have many devout Christians on this in this group. You should find the YouTube where Robert Spencer describes the theological aspects of jihad. The reason why is he'll explain that it is every jihadist's duty to punish Christians and Jews in this world. Allah will punish them in the next. But the Quran says they will see strife or punishment in this world and the next. Well, where are they going to get it? They're going to get it at the hands of the Muslims. Okay, I don't use the term Islamist. I use the term devout Muslim or jihadist. There are a lot of Muslims who pray on their own, who believe on their own, who go through Ramadan and fast on their own. They don't bother you, and they look like us, they talk like us in this country. That's fine. They're not the most devout, okay? Not all Christians always turn the other cheek either. We don't always follow what's in the instruction book or what we've been taught by our teachers. But they have the weight of Islamic scripture on their side. In Europe, when there are terrorist attacks in Belgium and France, the terrorists usually hide among other Muslims in other Muslim neighborhoods because no one will give them up. There is no formal organization in the Islamic world that is anti-violence. Okay, so they just go with it. China in 2014, when ISIS was rising in the Middle East, had their own attack in one of the Western provinces at a railway station. They didn't have guns, they didn't have bombs, so the attackers, the jihadists, used knives. They attacked people with knives, wounded about 50, killed 31 people before the police shot them dead. What did China do in 2014 in answer to that attack? They studied Islam. They studied Islam, and they are not held by our same strictures of freedom of religion. Okay, they found out what it was, and they put a program in place. They put communist representatives from the People's Liberation Army in every single mosque. They separated men. They put people in re-education camps. We have lots of protests that you see in the news about people that are very concerned with the human rights of Muslims in China. Well, it's true when you look at it from a human point of view, but China does not mess around. Okay, there was a little health and semi-religious program in China called Falun Gong, which is basically light Christianity light plus calisthenics. No smoking, no drinking. China cracked down on them and even harvested their organs because they were cleaner than normal. So if they're going to crack down on Falun Gong and they're going to crack down on Muslims in the Western province of China, they're not going to mess around, but they know it is a powerful weapon. And that's why they'll support it in this country, because we have a person much smarter than me is Bill Warner. He was a counter-jihadist in Tennessee. He coined the phrase that religious Islam is the invisibility cloak of political Islam. We don't see it because we're looking at religion and we want to give it a pass. And we also think in Western terms. So we think if we're just kinder, if we just make concessions, then these concessions will be answered or will be reciprocated. They will not be reciprocated from a religion that believes that it's supremacist and that it has everything that's owed by unbelievers to believers. So, we've seen this happen before because the USSR did it. Now China's doing it. China doesn't mess around. I'm not going to fight anymore about the term. Islamist is a polite term that we're trying to do to protect peaceful Muslims that we know. Thanks for letting me speak.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. Very interesting. Lonnie, you've had your hand up a while. Go ahead.
So two things, and I completely agree with Jim. So the first one, just reinforcing the Red-Green Alliance is not new. My entire PhD dissertation in 1976 was focused on Soviet relationship or Soviet involvement in the Middle East. The Soviet Union had alliances with Egypt, with Syria, with Iraq, and of course invented the PLO, tried to infiltrate other Arab countries. So the connection between the communists and the Islamist movement, especially in Egypt, that was the Pan-Arabic movement, very nationalist. Uh, that is not new, and we keep reinventing the wheel. The other point that Jim raised is really important. Just a quick war story. After 9/11, I had a bunch of war college students who just didn't wanted to go and fight. And I needed to find a creative outlet for them. So we wrote the very first national security strategy for combating terrorism, which President Bush signed. The only thing that was taken out of it was the notion that Islam cannot be seen as a religion. It's a holistic totalitarian system. It's a world view. It's not like the Judeo-Christian tradition where religion is a private matter. And even though in some section of Christianity, proselytizing is okay, you will never kill somebody in order to convert them to Christianity, which is a pillar of Islam. So yes, saying jihadi, in my mind, is the more correct than Islamist. And the term Islamophobia is just mind-boggling. By definition, a phobia is an irrational fear, right? I have a snake phobia. True. The concern here is not irrational. If you read all the writings that Jim just enumerated, you will be scared, and it will be extremely rational overall.
Yes, so it's not a phobia in that sense. You're right. You're right, Lonnie. Thank you. I'm going to go to Jim here, but before I do, Colonel Prince, you have a number of questions that were forwarded to you by Cindy. You might want to take a look at those if you get a chance. And if we don't get to them today, you'll see the people who have asked those questions. Jim Bowden, and Jim, by the way, before you get going here, Jim, I wanted to mention Duty Honor Country Commission to everyone, just to keep it in their minds that we're still moving forward. Well, we're kind of marking time with it right now, but Jim is the author of the Duty Honor Country Commission proposal and the various aspects of it. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, pass on talking about that right now. We are making some progress, but we'll take that up later. My weekly op-ed this week is about the fact that Islam doesn't rise to the level of a religion in Western civilization. And what I would encourage all y'all to do is, in addition to all the reading you need to do with the Quran, one of the Hadiths, and look at some of the schools of Muslim law, look at the whole body of that's in the Sunnah. And when you read all that stuff, to then talk to your family and then talk to your local government when they have Thanksgiving and Christmas celebrations and all that stuff, and make their school calendars, etc., their school boards, and then talk to your neighbors and, like I said, your family. So you have influence in that institution of family, institution of religion, and then talk to your priest, your preacher, or your rabbi, and tell them in no uncertain language that Islam may call itself an Abrahamic religion, but it's not. It may say it is, but it's not. It is monotheism, that's correct, but it's not an Abrahamic religion. It simply claims to be. And I'll wrap this up real quickly. Islam is to Western civilization as the Aztec religion is. So if you want to have Islam in America, then someone could say, well, let's have an Aztec revival and build ourselves a big temple here, in East Jesus, Georgia, and then we're going to bring back the Aztec religion. Yahoo. And Islam deserves the same protection of religion under the First Amendment that the Aztecs do, because Islam has not had a renaissance. The Islamic civilization has not had a renaissance, a reformation. It has not had an enlightenment. It has not had three great awakenings. Okay. It is 800 years at least behind us, because in 1250, all the imams got together and said, there's nothing more to learn. Muhammad learned it all. There's nothing new to learn. So they're 800 years behind us. And socially, they're 800 years behind us. So they're further behind us than the Arian Christian Visigoths. Did you know they were Arian Christians? Who sacked Rome. They were 600 years behind the Romans and were called barbarians. If you look at our Declaration of Independence, and I'll land this plane real quick. Declaration of Independence refers to the savages on the frontier. Nowadays, people then try and make land, acknowledgments or whatever. If you're living on the frontier next to savages and barbarians, then they are not accorded the same level of respect and authority that your civilization has. So until they reach our civilization, they should be kept out of our civilization. And so what I encourage you to do is to stand up. You're going to be called all kinds of names and who you're a bigot and blah, 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 but whatever. To go up and say, Islam does not rise to the level of a religion in Western civilization. It's an ideology. I always tack on the word. I sometimes use the word Islamist, but I say Muslim or Islamist totalitarianism. I always add totalitarianism. It is an ideology. It is an identity that includes a backward and barbaric religion. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. That's very erudite and very, very good. Totalitarianism is a feature of both socialism, communism, and Islam, and that really unites them right there. They want control.
Totalitarians of a feather flock together.
You betcha. Yes, they do. Dr. Erickson, please.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, first of all, this is my first attendance on this distinguished group. Wisdom would generally say, for the first time, keep your mouth shut. But I'm going to break that rule and
go ahead
and just simply say it's interesting that religion, in some form or another, has come out, as a factor in all this. I'm a PhD theologian, graduate West Point, class of 71. I travel internationally. I just came back from Uganda. I traveled Africa, all over Eastern Europe. I've made 4 trips so far this year. I'll be going to Kharkiv, Eastern Ukraine. I've been to the Ukraine 18 times. I'm a seminary professor. What I wanted to mention was the beauty of the name MacArthur. It's something that many graduates really don't understand. My PhD dissertation was really on the duty, honor, country speech. And when it's really studied, it's often packaged, rightfully so, as a great patriotic testimony to the American soldier. And I agree with that. I mean, amen, hallelujah. But, when you really study that speech and you do what we call an exegesis, and you go through and you listen to the words, it really is a theological document. It's the Judeo-Christianity all over it. And it's profound that there's over 70 some references that I can relate to the New Testament and the Old Testament. And what's even more important about this theological document is that when you integrate it with his speech on the USS Missouri and the Japanese surrender, his landing at Leyte Gulf, and even when he took over as the Supreme Commander in Japan, everything about MacArthur. He was even called like the Apostle Paul when he was in Japan after the war. But I really want to say is that the duty, honor, country speech is patriotic, pro-Army, pro-West Point. But people should realize that when you really do an exegesis on this, it is a powerful document paying tribute to the Lord God and to really where America fits. And it's very interesting too. I don't want to get too much into this, but my PhD focused on MacArthur, duty on our country speech, and how it related to several of the documents by the reformer Martin Luther. And they just tie in beautifully in all this. So I just pass that on to you. Words have meaning. The MacArthur, this whole group, just know that he wrote a theological document. I look forward one day in heaven when I can meet him. I think he was trying to say more than what the Army really picked up. And that would be my honest take on this to you guys.
Thank you. That was great.
That was wonderful, Dr. Erickson. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us today. And stick
Yeah, for
around,
sure.
please stick around with the organization.
I will.
Jim Wyman, that's a tough act to follow there. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. If you have a time limit, just wave me off or tell
Keep
me. I'll
going.
try to keep it brief. The U.S. Air Force Academy, according to my research, excused Muslim cadets last year or this year from certain physical exercises during Ramadan. Okay, this is a blunder, a big blunder. Okay, the Sharia law is described in a book called Reliance of the Traveler. Now, it's got that title because it tells Muslims how to behave even when they're traveling in the land of the unbeliever. When they're traveling in the land of the unbeliever, they're allowed to eat ham, okay? And they're allowed to skip prayers, and they can skip Ramadan while they're traveling or in the land of the unbeliever. Now, I don't believe that Air Force pilots or Air Force personnel should say, "Oh, I feel weak-hearted," or I'm a little faint because I'm fasting during Ramadan. It's a mistake. And in the Muslim world, the net weight gain during the month of Ramadan is actually positive, not negative, because they feast before and after the fasting period. That's minor. I have taken it on as a personal project to study what's happening, what's being taught to cadets at West Point about this, because this is, to me, is huge. And I did have an association with some conservative cadets over the last couple of years, and I tried to pass some books. A very, very brief and condensed biography of Muhammad, a 2-hour Quran. Okay, so you don't need to go through all that literature. And they said, "Well, thank you very much." And I said, "Well, can I give you some more copies? Leave them in the day rooms or something." He said, "No, we don't. Cadets don't read anymore." Okay, so it's a bit of a problem. So I did want to know what was being studied. Colonel Bill, you tried to get into some classes and they gave you some resistance. And the last time I'd actually monitored a class was during a reunion, but I think it was in 2002. It was the only time that they allowed alumni to go and sit in the backs of classes. I don't know if we even have access to classes, and I have to start to research it. I did visit the Jefferson Library. There are 36 books about Islam on the shelves. I photographed the spines, and one by one, I'll go down and see what they say. So that's a start of that, and I will try to find out what's being taught in the coursework. We have the Protestant chapel, which everybody knows about. We have the Catholic chapel and a synagogue there on West Point. One of the buildings, I think it's 146 or 147. It's the cute building between Ike Hall and Trophy Point. That's next to the Gingerbread House. That's dedicated to world religions, and it has a Muslim prayer room, a Hindu prayer room, and a Buddhist prayer room. Okay, sounds good that we recognize that where our Judeo-Christian and Athenian heritage lies, and we have chapels in stone for those. Prayer room sounds like we're balancing what we say. We're open to religions. What I'm researching is whether or not we can have or should approve a mosque, because once a mosque is dedicated, that land belongs to Allah. And it belongs to no one else, not the government, not the taxpayers, not the U.S. citizens. So I don't know how well the Academy is prepared for that. Prayer room sounds fine to me. Excusing cadets during Ramadan sounds like a big blunder. But I will report as my research goes on what I find about those books and the courses. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Jim. You know, it seems to me that the issue here is, and it's we need to discuss it within the MacArthur Society and address it to the public. I think, is Islam a religion in the rightful sense or not? And since many of us here think it's not, I think we've got some points to be made there, and that would answer some of the issues you were talking about, Jim. No mosque at West Point.
Right. It's a total plan for civilization with a religious component. And those people who use this word, well, it's one of the three great Abrahamic religions. No, Islam says that Abraham was a Muslim. Jesus was a Muslim. They taught Islam, and your followers corrupted the scriptures that God handed to Allah handed to them. So look a little deeper than surface, and you find out we have a big problem.
Great, that's good to know. We'll for our further discussion, we've got to bring this to an end. We're getting a little long here, but I do want to point out to the folks that asked the questions in the chat that Colonel Prince has a copy of them, so he may be able to get back to you. We'll leave that up to him and to Cindy to sort that out. And I want to thank Cindy and I want to thank Laura Perry as well for the work you both do in helping out the MacArthur Society. I'm going to give Dr. Colonel Ron Scott, Air Force USAFA 73, an opportunity, and then I'm going to ask General Valley to say a few words to us. Go ahead, Ron.
Great. Thanks, Sam. I have to say, this is probably one of the most stimulating conversations I've been part of. We're talking about such an incredible subject by individuals that have served our nation, have fought for it, and want to preserve the essence of America, as we talk about in our American Creed. And I want to thank Dr. Erickson for your commentary. You know, a lot of people don't recognize the Duty, Honor, Country speech by MacArthur as something that has a theological foundation, a basis. Which, and the last thing I'll say is, as I listen to this conversation, St. Augustine's book, The City of God, came to mind. And we struggle with that in terms of being good citizens, being law-abiding citizens, but in a way that does not conflict with our fundamental belief and understanding of our Judeo-Christian background.
Amen.
Some very difficult choices we have to make sometimes. And I am extremely honored to be part of this group. And I just hope we can continue the momentum that we've enjoyed so far. Thanks, Sam. Thanks, everyone.
You bet, Ron, and likewise to STARS. For those of you who aren't aware of STARS, Stand Together Against Racism and Radicalism in the Services, it is it's kind of, I won't say it's our parent organization, but it's our big brother organization in a real sense. And with that, General Valley, I'm going to ask you to say a few words as the chairman of our board.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you to everybody. What a fantastic presentation, Bill. When we built the MacArthur Society, it was really to abide and to support duty, honor, country all the way in the traditions of West Point. And we've grown with such a great membership now. And please get the word out to everybody. Join us. We have great programs, probably better than most that you'll hear from very experienced people who have served in various positions in our government and even at the academy. So God bless all of you and help us out. We're going to grow more and more, and we look forward to really bringing many more young people into the ranks of the MacArthur Society. So thank you again very much, all of you, for participating.
Thanks, everyone. Really appreciate your being here. This is very good. Colonel Prince, outstanding. Home run. Thank you.
Okay, take care, everybody.
Take care.
Thank you. Big Navy.
Likewise.